All right, so if you're a diving instructor, you know the feeling, right? You get a medical form, you're scanning down the list, and then you see it. A yes box is ticked, and your stomach just kind of drops. You want to be inclusive, of course you do, but you've also got this huge responsibility to keep everyone safe. It's a real tightrope walk, isn't it? Well, that tightrope is basically the Equality Act 2010, and today we're going to get some clarity.
So, let's get specific. Imagine a prospective new diver walks in. They're super keen, really excited to get started, and then they mention they have a history of epilepsy. Instantly, your brain goes into overdrive, right? What are the actual risks here? What does the law say I have to do? It's a seriously tough spot to be in. But stick with me, because by the end of this explainer, you're going to have a much clearer framework for making the right call.
You know, it's really easy to think the Equality Act is all about forcing us to take on unnecessary risks. But that's a huge misunderstanding. This law is not about ignoring safety. Not at all. It's actually about challenging our own assumptions and making sure everyone gets a fair shot.
Okay, so here's how we're going to break it all down. First, we'll look at a diver's right to dive, what the law actually sets. Then, we'll get into the duty to adapt. We'll figure out where safety draws the line, look at the role of doctors in all this, and finally, see how the act really plays out in the real world of UK diving.
So, first up, why should you, as a dive instructor or maybe a boat skipper, even care about this law? Well, because in the eyes of the law, you're a service provider, and that legal term comes with a real duty to be fair and inclusive.
And this applies to pretty much everyone. We're not just talking about the big dive centers. If you're an individual instructor, a training organization, a charter boat, even a dive club, this law applies to you. It's a really wide net, and it's so important to know that you're in it. And this is the big one. This is the absolute core of it. You cannot have a blanket ban, a flat-out policy that says we don't train people with diabetes, or no one with a history of anxiety. Well, that's not just unfair, it's straight up illegal. You have to look at the individual, not the label.
Okay, so if a blanket ban is out, what's the alternative? It's all about making something called reasonable adjustments. This is the cornerstone of the Equality Act, and honestly, it's where we, as diving professionals, can really make a massive difference.
So what does that actually mean, reasonable adjustments? Well, think of it like this. If a student in a classroom needs glasses to see the board, you wouldn't just tell them they can't learn, right? Of course not. You just make sure they can see. It's the exact same idea, just applied to diving. It's about giving people the tools they need to succeed and participate safely.
And what does this look like in practice? Well, it could be a whole range of things. It might be as simple as adapting your teaching methods, maybe just giving a student a bit more time in the pool to nail a skill. It could be providing some extra help with their gear, or allowing for different ways to get in and out of the water. It's all about finding creative solutions, not about lowering the actual standards of performance.
And let's be super clear on this. This isn't just about being a good instructor or being a nice person. This is the law. If you fail to even consider making a reasonable adjustment for someone, you're not just providing bad service, you're actually breaking the law. And more than that, you're closing the door on someone who just wants to experience the magic of the underwater world.
Now, I know what you're probably thinking. This all sounds great, but what about safety? And that is the #1 question, as it absolutely should be. Look, the Equality Act is not about throwing caution to the wind. It's a framework to help us make smart, responsible decisions, not to force us into taking unnecessary risks.
This slide here really gets to the heart of it. This is the critical difference. On the left, you've got unlawful discrimination, refusing a diver just because of their diagnosis, a blanket ban. On the right, you have a lawful and responsible decision, refusing a diver because their specific individual condition presents a real, unacceptable evidence-based risk. It's all about the why.
So what makes an adjustment unreasonable? Well, things like extreme cost or impracticality can play a part. But for us, in diving, the #1, the absolute deal breaker is safety. If an adjustment puts that diver or anyone else at an unacceptable risk, it is not reasonable. End of story.
Let me just hammer this point home. The Equality Act does not, I repeat, does not require you to get rid of essential safety standards. It doesn't rewrite the laws of physics. A diver still needs to be able to manage their buoyancy, handle an out-of-air emergency, and clear a mask. The goal is to adapt the path to meeting those standards, not to get rid of the standards themselves.
Okay, so we've got the theory. How do we put all this into practice? How do we make these decisions? Well, it all kicks off with our old friend, the medical screening process.
This is our first and best tool for gathering the info we need to make a safe and legally sound decision.
Think of this as your roadmap. Step 1, you get the medical form. Step 2, you identify a potential issue. Now this is the crucial part. Don't panic and don't just say no. Step 3 is to seek specialist medical advice, and that means a diving doctor, someone who understands both the medical side and the hyperbaric environment. With their expert input, you can then move to step 4, assessing the individual risk, and only then do you make a final, justified decision.
So let's step back a bit. The Act has been around for over a decade now. What's the real-world impact been on UK diving? Has it all been positive? Well, the answer is, it's complicated. There have been some amazing successes, but there are also some very real challenges that the industry is still grappling with. On the plus side, there's been this fantastic growth of adaptive diving. We're seeing more inclusive teaching methods and a greater focus on individual ability, which is brilliant. But there's an ongoing tension, right? You've got operators trying to balance inclusion against their fears about liability. There's still a lot of variability in how the rules are interpreted, and a heavy reliance on just a few specialist diving doctors to make the final call.
If you only remember one single thing from this entire explainer, please let it be this. Justify your decisions based on risk, not on assumption. That's it. That's the whole game. It's about doing your homework, assessing the real-world risk for that specific person, and not just reacting to a word on a form.
So, I'll leave you with this to think about. As a sport, are we doing enough? Are we truly assessing the diver who is standing in front of us, or are we still, too often, just reacting to the diagnosis on the paper? The next time you see that yes box ticked on a medical form, try to see it not as a problem, but as an opportunity. An opportunity to be a better instructor, to build a more inclusive community, and to be a true ambassador for our sport. Let's rise to the challenge.